On behalf of Wisconsin Youth Rugby, thank you for attending our first summit. I'd like to introduce Karen Fong Donoghue, who came in here from Colorado, owner of Rugger's Edge, and everything you need to know about scholarships and the system. She's the best in the nation. So thank you for coming, and Karen, thank you for coming and speaking with us. And this is what I need to listen to too. So I'm going to take it back here by Moose. So thank you.
Awesome. All right. So before I kind of jump in, it's pretty small group, so I don't want it to be, like let me just stand up here and tell you everything. I think first of all, I think it's good to get a sense of what group I'm talking to. So is I guess, raise your hand. Are you college coaches? We've got a college coach here, high school coaches, most of high school coaches, and then players. Then yes, players. Okay, and what grades are you guys in? I'm a senior. You're senior.
Senior.
Okay, so you guys are just thinking if there's other options and things like that? Okay, so the high school coaches that are in the room, because I want to make sure I gear this to you, right? Like I have a session and there's some basic things I want to go over, but at the same time I want to make sure I'm answering your specific questions. So are there any big questions or concerns that you commonly come across with your students or your families? And you can raise your hand or shout it out.
Place where update with this, they have this updated colleges that offer scholarships.
Yeah. So the question, so for those of you in the back who didn't hear, the question is there an updated list? There is. I don't know if it's anywhere. So I keep my own list. I do put it in this playbook that's available. It's online. It's also here, but it does list, for example, here all the varsity programs with rugby scholarship, and then there's also rugby programs without rugby scholarship. And I'll discuss what that means. Is it available online? Not really. That part of the reason I even started putting this together was it was kind of frustrating. It's not really readily available, right? So we'll talk a little bit about that. Any other big questions? I'll kind of start going through some stuff, and if we have questions, please feel free to jump in and ask questions. I talk about college and rugby all day long, every day, so some of the things I'll talk about seems really normal to me, but for most people, college rugby seems really weird compared to traditional sports. So any other big questions or concerns? Yeah?
Is there like a firm, final date? Because, she ended up growing in Wisconsin, but a couple of years ago we had a girl that she wasn't approached by a college coach until Nationals. Nationals was, a week before she graduated high school.
Yeah.
So is it the kind of thing where it's that late in the year that they wouldn't be eligible for any kind of scholarship or financial aid until the next academic year? Is it kind of like filing your taxes by April 15th kind of thing?
So a lot of these types of questions you're going to hate, because I'm going to say it depends. There are programs, if you're, especially for the women, if it's an NCAA program, they will follow NCAA protocol and their calendars and things like that. And usually your statement of intent to register, your national signing day is normally in February, but the last date is like May for that upcoming cycle. However, so if you're NCAA, you're guaranteed you're in a varsity program. You can be varsity and not NCAA. So for example, if she was getting offers from, say, Life University or Lindenwood, those are varsity programs that aren't NCAA, you can sign all the way up till first day of classes. You know what I mean? So it will depend on the school, and that's a question I would certainly tell students, families, they need to make sure they talk to that college coach and get it in writing. Like, what is it you're offering? Let me see the actual offer, right? So just like anything, if you're buying a house, if you're buying a car, you wouldn't just take it from the salesman word, like, oh, you can have this car for $20,000. Like, you want to see it out before you sign on the dotted line, right? Okay, so we're going to just kind of jump into some stuff, okay? And then, like I was saying, as we go through the questions, please let me know, okay? Can you guys hear me okay, or do I need the microphone? You guys are good? Okay. All right, so I'm going to kind of blast through some of this stuff, but you've never seen me talk before, this is a little bit of info about me. I've been a professional college consultant since 2009. So this is my full-time job. I live, eat, and breathe college and rugby all the time and love it. I'm sure if you find me at some point this weekend, I will just talk your ear off about college and rugby. I played college for many years. I played at UC Davis in California. I was a collegiate All-American there. Played on the junior national team, was in the national team pool, and then switched over to the dark side and became a referee. I was on that kind of national pool there for a while, doing lots of collegiate national championships and things like that. I'm currently now a World Rugby educator and trainer, and what that means is I go around and not only do I teach referee courses, but I audit them as well. So when there's educators, I go to make sure that the educators are doing a good job. So that's really fun for me. I love the education piece of that. So if you're ever going to those kinds of courses, those are things that I do. I'm based in Colorado. I have a rugby family, so my husband there, not a wing. he was a prop. That's our daughter. Her name is Libby. She definitely is rambunctious. So she'll probably be a flanker or something at some point when she gets to that. So it's good time. We're taking her to some rugby games. So she enjoys it for sure. So this is a little bit about what my company does, and it's so funny people call me like, oh, like your firm and your company. So it's just me. I have someone that helps me with some admin stuff, but generally speaking, it's a college advising firm, but we do, essentially our bread and butter is working with high school families one-on-one. So I work with those families, help them through the process, and it can mean a lot of involvement. It can also just mean single touches. Sometimes I just have one meeting with the family, set them off, they're good to go. Some families I stay with for multiple years. So it really depends on what the family needs. So obviously we do some college advising, some group seminars, and I also work with some college programs as well. Our students go to many, many different places, which is really exciting. I'm going to go through, these are kind of the basics. Some stuff we can touch on, but again, I don't want to just tie ourselves to this presentation. I do want to make sure that if you have specific questions that we answer those, okay? So the college rugby landscape, this is the big one. This is the one that I probably update this slide every 3 months. Because as you all know, the college rugby landscape is just kind of a mess, right? Like if I were to talk to you about football, volleyball, soccer, it's the same. Like here's the NCAA, right? Or here's NAIA, or here's the junior college conferences. Like everything more or less stays the same. College rugby is exciting, it's dynamic, but it is changing, right? So when everything got reorganized, this is essentially what the divisions or conferences look like. And by the way, I can send this PowerPoint as a PDF. I can send it to you. You can send it out or make it available, so you don't have to worry too much here. But this slide, I show it, but then I tell you to just forget it, because more than likely this will change again. But this is currently what it looks like for the men. These are the types of divisions you could play. Right? You'll have men that play. Oh, I'm D1A. That's underneath NCR, which is the National College Rugby Group. But there's also D1AA, which is under College Rugby Association of America. You also have Division II programs that are under NCR, but also there's Division II non-NCR, right? And then there's also small college. And on the women's, they get a little bit different. They have NIRA, right, which is the NCAA program. And you also have ACRA D2 programs. So that's their own, again, governing body, right? So it's basically everything's starting to break out a little bit. I do think this is going to make more sense in the years to come, but this is a little bit different than what it used to be. This numbers, this spreadsheet took a lot of time going back to USA Rugby, who literally didn't know. Unfortunately, they're like, we don't actually have the count. Thank goodness for Alex Goff and Jackie Finland at Rugby Report and the Rugby Breakdown. Between the two of them and the info I got from USA Rugby, this is what we have put together as what we estimated. That's like just about 414 and about 380, because a couple of these, the ones with the asterisks, there are programs that are noted as men's small college, but then because of COVID, we're inactive and they don't know if they're coming back. So the numbers are there, but again, it gives you a rough idea, but it's not a guarantee. Okay, but it does give you, what I tell a lot of students, and if you're working with high school families and they're asking you, can our kids, go to college and play rugby? Absolutely. Okay, so bottom line, I tell every single student I ever meet, I'm like, if I'm in a room with a bunch of students, who here wants to play college rugby? their hands get raised. Okay, every single one of you with your hands raised can go play college rugby, right? If we're talking about football, probably not the case, right? Most high school football players do not go on and play college football. But with rugby, if you want to do it, you absolutely can, because look at all the different pathways you can go, right? Like the players on your team they love rugby, but they're maybe not the best athlete. Maybe they don't go women's D1 elite. Maybe they're going to play small college. And that's fine. They're still going to find good competition and good teams. Okay, so the big thing I tell students and families to focus on and let your families know about is look at all these options. You know, if you want to play, you can. This is one of the rare sports that you can go from high school to college. Something I always think is really interesting too is the percentage of students that go from high school sports to college sports, intercollegiate, not intramurals, right? So not like, let's just play whatever, something on your own campus. If you're playing other colleges, it's like less than 2% of high school athletes go on. So it's exciting. You should tell them, like, this is an experience that most students in general and also high school athletes don't get, right? And you can do this with college rugby, which is really exciting. I'm going to take a break for a quick second. Any questions about all of this? Everyone's face is like... Okay. Now I will tell you that in the U.S., there's around 2,200 four-year universities and colleges. So we're not even counting junior colleges. We're not counting international schools either. So there's options. That's the biggest thing I stress to students and families is tons of places you could go, right? It's a lot of options. So keep their mind open and keep exploring, okay? All right, I'll keep going. Some examples of what those college teams look like. Again, this may or may not change, but you can kind of see that one of the things that's interesting is that the school's NCAA designation does not determine what they're going to play in college rugby, as you see. Right? So you can go to a like Mount St. Mary's is not locality for an NCAA sport. Let's say they're Division III, their men's rugby can play D1 because they're just going to choose what division to opt into. Okay, so sometimes athletes are like, I want to play Division I, but they're only looking at Big Ten or something like that, right? Like kind of the usual suspects of what they would think Division I is, and they wouldn't think that some of these schools are in the divisions. So just kind of make sure your students understand, don't focus on the divisions, because it can vary between the schools. Does that kind of make sense? Okay. All right, let's get to the kind of fun stuff. Because we do have a lot of women's players, and I'm sure some of you coach women's rugby. Women's rugby on the NCAA side is huge, awesome. They need to get to 40. They're really pushing for it. The ones in red were all the new programs that were added last year, or were announced this last year, coming up this year. So the big ones, like Princeton, just announced that they've been recruiting. She literally met with the admissions director last week. She was hired on. She has to recruit a class. I mean, it's crazy. So, but that's exciting. I mean, this group continues to grow. So especially if you're anyone here coaches high school girls, right? Yeah. This is huge, right? I would say maybe 3 or 4 years ago, the majority of clients that came to me were all boys families. This last year, over half of the students that I worked with were girls, because this is where I think families see an opportunity for their daughter, right? They're like, okay, my kid's not going to go play soccer in college, or you get a chance to get an athletic scholarship, because thousands and thousands and thousands of girls play soccer. There's not that many girls that play rugby. So they're all scrounging for this very, very small percentage of players. And they're still, I would say the majority of these programs are still looking. So if you have seniors, you want to take a look at this. Now, I do want to make a point. When it comes to athletic scholarship, and we'll get more into the nuts and bolts about this, but only Division I and only Division II offer athletic scholarship. Okay? None of the Ivy League schools offer athletic scholarship. All of them can offer merit scholarship, with the exception of Ivy League. Sorry. Ivy League only does need-based money. Okay? But this is a screenshot or something that when you, again, talk to your families, between now, I think we have maybe 2 or 3 more years, they have to get to 40 more, they have to have a total of 40 NCAA schools to have a true NCAA championship. So right now, they're still on the emerging list. As soon as they get to 40, they will be an official NCAA. Okay? Any questions about this? Okay. So these are the new programs. This includes some of the men and the women. Again, I just wanted to show that like every year we have more and more programs that are added, which is exciting. And this is what you want to tell, especially if you're building your programs and you're talking about it. You know, you're like, look, the landscape for college football is actually getting smaller, where rugby's getting bigger, right? So rugby's growing because programs and colleges and universities see it as a growth area. They can increase their enrollment. They can build the diversity of their campuses with rugby, where football, for example, costs a lot of money to run, right? And the return may not be that great, especially for like the Division III football program. It's not a revenue sport for them, so a lot of them are turning to rugby. So it's really exciting to see all these new programs that are coming forward and adding rugby.
Quick shout out.
Yeah.
Jury's here.
Yeah.
Wheeling's here. Ryle Grandi is here.
Yep. Yeah, so I think they'll be in the recruiter row. So I mean, I'm definitely, especially when it comes to the new programs, think about it like they're in school, right? So I am Newbury College or Drury. You mentioned Drury, right? The school saying, look, we want to build this program. We're giving you guys money to run a team. The head coach there is like, I don't have players. So they're in a tight spot. Like they need players. So you can leverage that. If you're a player, they need you more than you need them right now, right? So you can leverage that a little bit more right now versus some of the more established programs. They may not offer you as much because they're not really as much in, right? So this is a good kind of sweet spot, especially for some of those players that are looking to maybe go to college with the least amount of cost involved, right? Okay. Okay. I have the slide here because has anyone seen? Can someone tell me what you think those 3 mean? Varsity, Varsity Club, and Club. Take a stab at it. Anywhere. Yeah.
Club is associated with the school.
So you're saying club is not associated with the school, okay? Well, you're in the back. Did you raise your hand?
Yeah, clubs don't have the financial support that varsity has. Usually they're run by the students that make up the team themselves.
Perfect.
Club usually has, varsity club usually is kind of a mix. They have support but aren't officially identified as varsity.
Yeah, perfect. So close. So you're pretty much right on there. There's a lot of other things that get added, but generally speaking, and I think it's helpful for the coaches in the room to know what this means, because your players are going to hear a lot of this terminology thrown around, and it may or may not be the like complete truth. If that makes sense. I'm not saying college coaches are like out there like lying, but they're trying to sell their program, right? So they're going to say, we're varsity, we're varsity club, well, we're club, but we're really like the varsity. Well, what does that really mean, right? So I think if you kind of know what the definitions are, again, you help me, you help the coaches educate your players, so when they're researching, they know what we're looking for, right? So same thing, if you are going to go buy a car tomorrow, you're not like, I'll take whatever car. It's like, well, you have family, you have dogs, you guys like to go to the mountains, right? Like there's certain things you need for your lifestyle, same with your students. They need to know what they're looking for so that when they start researching colleges, they find the right ones. I was telling Britt, I was either telling you or I was telling Salty, I had a call with a family last week. I said, oh, we've already started coming up with our list. I was like, oh great. They're like, oh, we just want to run it by you. Like, okay. So they start telling me the colleges they're interested in, right? And they're like, oh, Penn State, Arizona, Indiana, and then they're like BYU, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's it. Like that was kind of random for this family, this kid I'm talking to. I said, well, you know that BYU is like it's a Mormon university, like Brigham Young University. They're like, wow, no, I didn't know that. Okay, so you made up this list with no research, right? Zero. He's like, oh, I had no idea. The family's like, well, we didn't know. Okay, first thing you need to do is you can't just like look on what they did. They looked at the D1A rankings and they just picked the top like 10 schools. And they're like, that's where I want to go. Like, well, that doesn't make any sense, right? This student wants to go with architecture and they have Lindenwood on the list. Lindenwood definitely does not have architecture, so it doesn't make any sense for this student, right? So really thinking through every single student, what is it that they want to do with their life? What is their budget? What kind of rugby program? That all has to come together to find the right list, right? So the big things for you guys to understand, varsity program is one that's supported by the school, right? That includes the financial backing, so a lot of times that means paid coaches, it means facilities, it means support staff, it means academic advisors, it can mean kit, it can mean cleats, and all the scrum machines, and all that kind of stuff, right? So things you would associate that, their soccer team probably has access to, volleyball team, which should be relatively comparable across those sports, okay? Varsity club is going to be like a step down. And I think rugby, maybe lacrosse is probably the other sport that I think is similar, that has a similar model. You'll have some teams that kind of have half and half. Some pieces that are varsity and some pieces that are not. So Penn State is a good example of varsity club. They get some funding from the school for their coaches, for travel, for early registration for classes for the players, but they don't have any athletic scholarship dollars. So not technically considered a varsity team on their campus. They're called a team sport. And then you have club, which is, by the way, 90% of the programs in the country are club. So it's not a bad thing. You can play really competitive club rugby that will beat a varsity team. So when I have kids say, I want to play on the best team, I'm like, look, like, you go to Indiana?
I just graduated.
Okay, so it's a club team, yes?
Yeah.
Right, okay. So Indiana, I think if you went head to head with New England College, which is a varsity team, you guys beat them. Right, if you played Vassar, which is a varsity D2 program, you're gonna beat Vassar. Nothing against Vassar, Coach Brown, like great program, but it's just different, okay? So, just so you understand, the vast majority of programs are club. Make sure your kids know. Club does not mean worse, it's just different. Okay, yeah, question.
Does this determine whether it's like D1, D2?
Oh, good question. No, it does not. The question is, does this determine whether or not it's Division 1, Division 2, or whatever division? No. So, teams can be whatever, and then we'll have whatever designation they have, and then they will choose what division they want to play in. So, for example, that varsity team, say New York Vassar, there's our varsity division of women and men, but they're both Division 2. Yeah. But very good. Okay.
So a lot of questions that we get from families are,
Yeah.
what should offer scholarships and opportunities? How do you know?
How do you know? Okay. I would say, first of all, you can look in the book. Okay, so it's in here. The best way that I would, if they've done the research and they're like, I've come up with my list, do they have athletic scholarship dollars? Typically, if they're going to offer athletic scholarship, the first step I would say is, are they on that school's intercollegiate athletics website as an official sport? If they're not, it'll be unlikely they're going to offer you athletic scholarship. So what I mean by that is, if I Google Iowa Central rugby, their website comes up on the Iowa Central school's website under athletics, under sports, right? If I went to University of Washington rugby, it does not come up, right? So it's football, volleyball, soccer, blah, blah. Rugby will come up under clubs, intramurals, things like that. So if it's not on the intercollegiate athletics page, it is going to be unlikely they're going to get athletic scholarship dollars. Can they get a little bit, maybe from like an alumni fund or something? Maybe, but it's still not going to be a lot.
So we're looking at the system here, we talk varsity, varsity club.
Yep. Yep.
The clubs associated with the schoolhouse, that have the scholarship dollars, varsity club, essentially varsity possible.
Yes. Yep. I know. This is why it's annoying, right? You're going to talk to families and say, yes, but it depends, and it depends on, so like that Penn State, they're in that middle part, they could say, look, we can help up to 5 students get into the school, but then we can't offer any money. Same with Berkeley, right? So you see Berkeley for the men, they're on their varsity, They can help students get into their school that may otherwise not get in on their own, but they have no athletic scholarship plan. So, first step would be either you're looking on this list here, or once they built their list, I would look on that school's website and see, is rugby on their list? It is on Lyndon Wood's list, right? It's on Life or Notre Dame College or AIC, right? It's on their list because they're supported by the school. If they're supported by the school, at that point, the next step is once you start having conversations with coaches, then you can ask. It should not be the first thing they ask, but they can ask. Okay? Good question. Good? How much time? Am I okay on time? For like 10 minutes, right? Okay. I'm gonna keep going because I know there's a ton. Let me keep going. Because I know scholarship is probably the biggest question, right? Okay. So, let's talk about this a little bit. This is probably the question I get asked the most. Okay. Well, again, I want you to be able to define this so that when you talk to your families, you understand what, and I will clarify, but if a family comes to you and says, so where can we go and get a scholarship? And you say, okay, what do you need? Okay? The most money any of your students are ever going to get is in the middle, a merit scholarship. Okay? Every single college and university, with the exception of the Ivy League, merit scholarships are the way to go. Okay? So if a family comes to me and says, look, we got, and I had this last year, we got a family of 5, this is the first one, we got to make sure this is affordable because there's no way we're going to pay full rate out of pocket for some of these colleges, right? That's their out of pocket's like $78,000 a year. Okay? That is crazy. Like, I was like, my daughter's not going there for sure. It is expensive. But I will tell you, most students who go to that college do not pay full price. Right? It is a little bit like buying a car. That's a sticker price. No one's paying that. A merit scholarship is where most students get a huge chunk of money deducted. Right? So it's a big discount. Yeah.
Is that for the GPA scholarship?
Yep. So it's based on generally GPA, so grade point average, right? Your test scores, a little bit different because tests are optional right now. We'll talk about that. And things like leadership, things like, for example, some schools could offer a rugby leadership scholarship. Right? Or some will have an automatic, because you have a 3.5 and an 11.50 in SAT, you get a scholar award 11,000. And the higher your GPA and test scores are, you get more money, okay? But the biggest chunk of money usually is merit, and ideally what you want to go do is stack it with other scholarships. Okay? So rugby scholarship is money your student is getting just because of their talent. They're an amazing fly half, they're an amazing hooker, whatever it is. That team needs it, they're going to offer them more money. Okay? So what does this really look like? Let's go to this. Whoops. Let's go to this. Okay. This is generally what it might turn out to. So this is an example, okay? So this is one family, they have a budget. On average, in-state public universities cost around $20,000 a year, okay? This is a student who has a 4.0, 1,300 SAT, fair, that's a good student, right? Pretty good rugby player as well, right? They're an all-star team, they're the captain, they're a great leader. And the family is like, we'd like to pay about $15,000 a year. Pretty decent, right? So they're going to go to this rugby school. They get a merit scholarship plus a rugby scholarship, and now we're at the cost of attendance, which is around what they want. So generally, this is what it would look like for families. So some families of mine, I'll say, look, can we get this to 5,000? Can. But I'll give you the caveat here is you can't choose. You have to be okay with, will you go to Wayne State College in Nebraska? Right? Will you go to Notre Dame College in Ohio? Will you go to X, Y, and Z? You can't say, I want this, but I want it to be at UCLA. It's not going to happen, right? So same thing. I can't say, I want to live on beachfront property, and it's got to have 5 bedrooms and 3 baths, and it's got to have a yard for my dogs. I only want to pay $400,000 for it, right? Like, I can't determine what I want. I might be able to get beachfront property for $500,000, but it may not be in the location I want, right? So that's the big thing I tell every single family, get your priorities straight. Before having a conversation with me, and you can tell them to them too, right? So if you get that question about like, you want a scholarship? Okay, great. We can do it. what are your deal breakers? They're like, no, it has to be near our house within 100 miles. Like, can't do it. Right? So I have families in California. Like, we want all this, but we want on the West Coast. Like, my son really doesn't like the cold. Well, we're not going to get in California. It's just not going to happen. Right? So they've got to be willing to be flexible to say, will you go to Arkansas State? Will you go to Missouri? Will you go to basically like areas of the country that are less popular, right, than California or Colorado or something like that? Okay? Questions? Because I know scholarship is a big deal. Anything? Okay.
So you start talking about out of state, you start talking out of state tuition. Do any of them have, besides the scholarship, waive the out of state tuition piece? Is that a play you can do?
There is. The only one I know is, I don't say guarantee. So Boise State, for example, they would be able to offer the WUI discount, which is their Western Undergraduate Exchange discount. Arkansas State is an example. Idaho State's another one where they would get you in-state tuition. Most of the time, it's going to be hard, and it would depend on what state you're in. So, for example, that WUI discount for Boise State, you have to be in a WUI state. It may not apply if you're here in Wisconsin. But you can look up whether or not Wisconsin also has a program with interchangeable states. You have it? Okay. So then you would double check. Now, I know even with WUI, for example, you still have to meet certain minimums. You have to have that GPA and that test score to get that discount. But for example, Central Washington, which is a varsity men's and women's program, for their rugby players, they will get you the WUI discount. So even if you're not a WUI state, you could get that discount, if that makes sense. Okay? All right. Keep talking because I know there's a lot of stuff to cover. Okay. All right. As a high school coach, you take anything away from the session with me, we go back to the bulk of the money. Right? The bulk of the money for your kids is going to come from academics. Right? That sucks because you're a rugby coach, you want to talk about rugby. A lot of families I talk to, I'm like, do I need to get them a strength and conditioning trainer? Or do I need to go pay for speed training? I'm like, I mean, if the student wants to do that, great. Right? That fits with your budget. You want the most money. They need to do their homework. They need to go to school. They need to do well in school. That's where they're going to get their money. So, by the way, it does not mean you have to have a 4.0 to get money. Right? So I had a student last year with a 3.1 GPA, right? No test scores because it was test optional. They still went to a really good school, and they got offered $18,000 merit scholarship for a school that was $30,000. They got some rugby scholarship as well. Total cost for that family is $7,000 a year, right? And they're pretty stoked about that. That's way less than they would pay for an in-state public university. So that's a 3.1 GPA, which is still pretty good, but mostly B's, maybe a C or 2 in there, right? So not like the best student, but a pretty good student. So I'm not saying they have to be the best, but that wasn't a top rugby athlete, pretty good rugby athlete. That the team said, look, this is going to be just a good utility player. We can use him. We can train him up to what he needs to be. Okay? So grades are good, rigorous curriculum, encourage them to take those tougher classes if they can, if they go to school, and then tests can come into play as well. I could do a whole talk on tests, so I know I'm running out of time here. So any questions about this? Encourage them, if they haven't already, something that is online and it's free and it's in here as well. And if your students are going to the combine this weekend, one of the best things I would tell all of your students to do is have a rugby resume. Okay, it's a one sheet. You can Google Rugger's Edge rugby resume, or it's on my homepage. It's a drop down under resources. And one of the things it asks for stats, which you will get this Sunday, where you go to the combine, right? You put this together as a one-page thing, that when they start talking to coaches, they have everything ready to go, right? They have their GPA. Most students don't know their GPA, which I'm surprised by. They should know what their cumulative academic GPA is. And as a high school club program, you probably like, I don't know, maybe I don't need it. When I was in San Diego, I remember I think it was actually the Mustangs. They had a parent that had a folder that like every semester what they did. I thought it was great. They asked every kid to turn in an unofficial transcript. Not because they, like the club didn't really care, but it was to keep the kids accountable, right? Like we're doing something for our club that will help you down the line, because college coaches will then eventually ask for that too. So students go, oh, they email coaches, I'm a 3.5 GPA. They fill out a recruit form, 3.5 GPA. You see that transcript come through later. Well, they had a 3.5 that one semester, but cumulatively, their GPA is actually a 2.8. That's different, right? So these are things you can help remind those students, this is what I need from you, right? Turn it in or send it to me by this date, beginning of our, before we start our season. Let's see everyone's unofficial transcript. If they don't know how to get it, they need to find out, because that's something they will turn in when they apply, turn in when they talk to coaches. So they should have a copy every semester. They can usually print it off their own portal, or they can ask their school to register and print it for them. Yeah.
Is that something that you can approach your parents for and say, listen, tell the registrar when, I want Sally's report card that they give it to me, and so it's on file that I have. So when he contacts me about my booker, okay, I can say, yeah, this is her name, this is her GPA, this is what she's involved in, and just kind of streamline things for your athlete.
So I think, yes, you can do it that way. I would make sure you, in your club contract, you have some sort of like sign off on exchange of info.
Oh, yeah.
Second thing is, you're going to take on a lot more work. I would actually put it back to a college coach. Coach Nelson were to contact you and say, hey, I'm interested in this player, can you send me info? I would actually have it more, hey, I'd love to. I'm actually going to connect you directly with the student. The student needs to send that info back to him. So you're not the middleman. So a big piece of what I do also is I help students understand this process is between students and families and the coach. High school coaches, you're there to kind of connect. That's my job, right? Connect. That's it. Like, I will help kids understand, like, if you're talking to Coach Nelson or whoever, you're in charge of this process. I'm not, right? They're not recruiting me, they're recruiting the students. The students got to be able to, oh, Coach Nelson, or is that Coach Miller? Hey, there's Coach Miller. Coach Miller asks you for something. You're not waiting 3 months to email her back and say, oh, you asked for that transcript, here it is, right? This is how we kind of do it in the real world is someone after you're applying for a job and they ask you for something, you send it, right? So checking emails, that's another piece that you can get your students in the habit of. I have a bad habit too. I will text my students to remind them to do stuff, but when it comes to application time, that does not go through text, right? It goes to their emails. They have to check their emails. Right now, I have students that have applied and they're like, oh, how do I, they'll get an email from a college saying, hey, we got your application, but we're still missing your transcript from your school. If they haven't checked their email in 3 months and they have like 4,000 unread emails, that college is not going to accept them because they're missing that piece of data. Right? So those are 2 things for sure. Help them start to do these pieces early. So the earlier it becomes a habit, right? Like, okay, we know we have to keep track of our grades. You get to see it too, right? As a high school coach, you get to say, oh, Susie, like what's happening with your grades? Even if it's 9th grade, we'll start. You're like, oh, you're already getting C's and D's, like, let's talk about this, right? So how do we help you with that? Checking emails, getting them to kind of be on that same process. Am I out of time? Rich, am I out of time?
Yeah, the salty's talking too, so.
Are you guys okay for like 5 more minutes? Okay, all right.
Perfect.
The stronger academic profile, merit scholarships, and those 2 things. Okay. Let's talk about the athletic stuff. Again, more stuff that you can help with, right? That's what I want to make sure you guys know how to do. On the athletic piece, let's see. I were to focus on a few things to kind of stress. Because these are things that I commonly hear from college coaches, and actually we've got college coaches here, they can probably speak up about this too. Yes, college coaches want talent. Yes, would it be awesome to have a kid that can do a drop goal from the 50? I mean, yeah, you would love to have a kid that can do those things. Are you going to find it? Probably not, right? Most college coaches tell me, look, I don't care about what what this student looks like, what this player looks like now, I'm thinking about what they will project in a few years. More training, more time, more growth. It's really easy to find the best player now on a field, but some of those guys burn out, right? Some of those gals burn out. You want to know the player that has great character, great coachability, that's going to be that great player you're going to have when they're a sophomore, junior, senior, right? So that kind of coachability is tough. High school coaches in the room, what do you think are good examples of good character that you see on your field right now? Think of that player on your field that you're like, I love this kid. Like, this is the best, one of the best.
Congratulating his friends.
Yeah, right? Good. What other things? Anything else you can think of? Sorry?
I don't know about quickly, but the person who uses their mind on the field is the one that
So you're saying that's an example of a bad trait, right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, do you have something too?
One that I teach, but being able to like recover after like using this doctor or like
Yep. Perfect. Perfect. So these are all things, for example, when I talk about film, it's not always about like, at least when I look at film sometimes, it's not like, I could put together a great highlight film of me when I was a player, like kicking. I never kicked. I was literally my team player. You're not allowed to kick, never kicked. But I could put together a film where it looks like I can kick, right? Because I can edit, right? You can do a lot of that stuff. If I were to watch a full game or a half or something, what I'm looking for is maybe I have an offload pass and my player, my super quick wing, because I know that she's going to get there, she scores, but I am following all the way in. I'm supporting her all the way in, right? Those are like examples of, if I were looking at myself, like, that's a good player, right? Like, I support her all the way. I didn't just pass and then like stop and watch her go. And it's like, oh, this girl finishes. Well, I'm going to finish that chase even if I can't make that final tackle. I'm still trying my hardest to get there. Those are still good things that coaches will look for. The rugby resume, which I talked about. So if you have players that are coming on Sunday, they're going to meet coaches in the recruitment row, have a resume. Have all that information written down so they don't have to chase you. So a common thing I tell students too is, you want to be recruited, be an easy recruit. Don't make them have to do extra work by chasing you down. Have everything available, okay? Game film, I'm running out of time, but camps, tournaments. Huh? Yeah, I know, okay. So, all right, I'm done. Do you have more questions? I actually will be presenting more, so if I can get more into it. I do have playbooks up here. You can take a look. They're available. They just came in literally 2 days ago. Tell your families about them. They're available online. I'll have a few here you can look through. And that's it. And then to save the date, I'm having another webinar with some head coaches for women's teams February 1st with Vassar, Colgate, and Karen Fong colleges. I'll send that out as well.